Okay, let's dive into this. We're talking about a story that has it all. A modern-day crime lord, a massive criminal empire that was hiding in plain sight, and a crypto fortune so huge it kicked off a major international incident.
So, here's the big question we're tackling today. How on earth did one guy manage to build a crypto and gambling empire worth billions of dollars, only to watch it all just vanish in one of the weirdest heists and seizures we've ever seen?
Before we even get into the how, just look at this number. $15 billion. That's the value of the Bitcoin that authorities got their hands on. It is one of the biggest forfeitures in history. And believe me, the story of where it all came from is even crazier.
Now, to really understand this whole thing, we're going to do something a little different. We have to start at the end. The big climax of this entire saga, well, that's actually our starting point. The day the guy behind it all was finally caught.
And boom, January 8th, 2026, it all comes to a head. After years of investigation spanning multiple countries, Chen Zhi, the founder of the Prince Group and the alleged godfather of one of the biggest criminal syndicates in Southeast Asia, was nabbed and shipped from Cambodia back to China to finally face the music.
I mean, just look at this list of official charges from China's Ministry of Public Security. It reads like the rap sheet for a Bond villain, right? We're talking illegal casinos, huge fraud operations, and, you guessed it, laundering billions and billions in dirty money. This was no small-time gig. It was a massive, sprawling enterprise.
So you're probably asking yourself, right? How could a man wanted for crimes this serious just operate out in the open for so long? Well, that's because he built a really, really convincing public front for his whole empire. So let's meet the man himself, Chen Zhi. Born in China, he later becomes a Cambodian citizen, and in 2015, he starts the Prince Group. His official story? Oh, it's a classic entrepreneur tale. You know, a young, hungry guy who took a $2 million loan from his uncle and supposedly spun it into this huge real estate and business conglomerate. And this is where it gets really wild. You've got this tale of two empires, side by side. On the surface, the Prince Group was a household name in Cambodia. I mean, they were into everything: real estate, banking, even ride-sharing apps. But behind that legit-looking front was a seriously dark criminal reality, one built on forced labor, these massive online pig-butchering scams, and a global money laundering network. Okay, so let's pull back that shiny corporate curtain and take a look at the horrifying engine that was actually powering this whole empire, the scam factory. And this is the real human cost of Chen Zhi's operation. According to investigators, people from all over the world were baited with fake job ads. But once they showed up at his facilities, they were basically prisoners. They were tortured and forced to run these huge crypto scams against their will. It's absolutely harrowing.
And the operation itself was incredibly slick. Chen Zhi was running at least 10 of these secret scam parks in Cambodia. And we're not talking about some dingy basements. These were industrial-scale facilities. They use what are called phone farms to control just tons of social media accounts, targeting victims all over the globe, with a network that stretched across more than 30 countries.
But, you know, an operation this big and this brutal, it's not going to stay in the shadows forever. Eventually, the sheer scale of the fraud and the human suffering caught the attention of law enforcement agencies all around the world, and the walls started to close in.
And this timeline just shows you what a long, patient game this was for law enforcement. Chinese police were already on his tail way back in 2019. But get this, in 2020, while he's being investigated, Chen Zhi actually becomes an official advisor to Cambodia's prime minister. He's embedding himself deeper and deeper into the establishment. But the pressure just kept building, until finally the U.S. Department of Justice indicted him in 2025, and that's what set the stage for his extradition.
So once that U.S. indictment dropped, the financial house of cards came tumbling down, fast. Authorities across the globe moved in to freeze his assets. And you can see the numbers here, a mind-blowing $15 billion in Bitcoin seized by the US, on top of hundreds of millions more in assets frozen in Singapore and the UK. Okay, but this is where the story gets really, really weird. It brings us to the final and probably most bizarre chapter. What actually happened to that $15 billion in Bitcoin? Yeah, the answer is definitely not what you're thinking.
Get ready for this twist. It's a perfect example of what investigators call black-on-black crime, which is basically a heist inside of a criminal enterprise. You see, the U.S. government didn't take the Bitcoin from Chen Zhi. They took it from the hackers who stole it from him first.
So let's just walk through this unbelievable sequence of events. First, the Prince Group builds up this massive Bitcoin fortune. Then, in 2020, some hackers swoop in and steal the entire thing. Turns out even criminal masterminds aren't safe. Chen Zhi's crew was supposedly so desperate they were posting public messages on the blockchain, begging the thieves for their crypto back. It's wild. Then, years later, the US DOJ manages to track down the hackers and seizes the stolen Bitcoin from them. So the key takeaway here is that the US recovered criminal assets that had already been stolen by other criminals, and that's huge. It totally shatters the myth that crypto is some untraceable safe haven for criminals and sets a crazy new precedent for how these assets can be recovered across borders.
So, the kingpin is caught. His empire is in ruins. But this whole messy affair leaves us with a pretty deep question. When a digital fortune is stolen by criminals and then seized by a government from other criminals in a totally different country, what does ownership even mean anymore? In this global game of cat and mouse for criminal crypto, it's not just about who wins anymore, it's about who even gets to write the rules.